Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and this video we're breaking down House of the Dragon. The 5th episode is now here, and it's all based around one key theme. That is hunting. Whether it be the guerrilla warfare employed by Kristen, the cats now roaming the castle, the people descending on Harrenhal, the gold cloaks being slaughtered in the street, or Larys just being like, mate, you whinge a lot. Everyone is striking with surprise. This episode is one of the talky ones, which I know in the IMDb ratings means it's probably going to score low, but I actually really like the political intrigue ones. So I can't wait to talk about this episode and also compare it with the books. Now, as always, we begin with the tapestries.
Would you like to see the tapestry?
Well, I do, man, and I sit through these every week to see if there's something new. Unfortunately, episode 5 doesn't have any massive new additions, but we do get two figures pulling them apart. This plays into the idea of the civil war between the people and how there's lots of fighting done through people instead of soldiers. Strategies are also in place to stop the forces moving throughout the Riverlands, and we begin with a crossing burn to Tumbleton. This is what's holding back the army of the Blacks, and it's also something that holds back the Greens as well. Both are kind of stuck relying on the bridges, as the Riverland currents are impossible to swim through. Through Westeros, there's several crossings that must be navigated, and in order to do that, you have to be in favour with the side holding it. We saw what happened when you're not with the Red Wedding, and they're basically destroying their own lands to control the journey of their enemies. Inside a tent, we get Tommy Flanagan's Roddy the Ruin, and there's also Sir Oscar Tully and Peter Piper. Unable to reach Tumbleton, they realise Criston Cole is ultimately kicking their asses, and that they have to employ his tactics in order to take him down.
Or we could play at his game.
That's something that constantly appears throughout the episode, and we have each side starting to use the other's tactics. Criston then comes in like he's playing Assassin's Creed and takes out the soldiers in the night. Peter Piper gets picked off like a pickled pepper, but in the book, he died a bit later during the Battle of Acorn Hall. They then burn the camp, which is a big shot that was shown in the Weeks Ahead trailer. I did think this fire might be caused by a dragon, but I appreciate that Cole and the gang are using this as a strategy. The company obviously doesn't have dragons at their side, but it's just a nice way to play in that theme of using your enemy's strategy against them. It's guerrilla warfare right from the off, and I love how throughout this episode, the gang are all disheveled and covered in mud. Gwaine later on even, he looks like he has some sting makeup on. This is something that carries through the episode, though, and they're far from the glamorous knights that they were before the Civil War. In the book, guerrilla warfare and harassment of the baggage train was also used quite a lot. Aemond was also a victim of it too, and so was Criston Cole. His men were picked off by Benjicott Blackwood's army, and just like this episode, the villages ahead of them were burned, and the wells were also poisoned. Now, I don't know about you, but I spend way too much time on my phone. Whether I'm waiting for something, going somewhere, or just relaxing for a few minutes, I've actually started using some of that time a bit differently. One of the things I've been trying recently is freecash.com, which is a platform where you can earn extra money by playing mobile games. You can complete offers, answer surveys, and just make a bit more money in your downtime. It's free to sign up, and getting started only takes a couple of minutes. I downloaded Solitaire Clash through Freecash, enabled app tracking so I could track my progress, and after playing for a while, I came back to find I'd earned £8. I also unlocked a reward streak and picked up a few extra bonuses on top, which was a very nice surprise. I have to say, this isn't a replacement for a job or a full-time income, but if you're already spending time on your phone, it's a simple way to earn a bit of extra money. A lot of regular users make around $30 to $100 a month by using it consistently. Freecash has more than 260,000 reviews on Trustpilot with a 4.8 star rating. When you're ready to cash out, your first withdrawal has a minimum of $25, and after that, there isn't a minimum withdrawal amount. So you can cash out whenever you want and go through PayPal, crypto, or choose from a range of gift cards. If you want to try for free yourself, then use my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen. New users in these countries on screen right now can also claim a $10 bonus after completing their first offer. So if you're in one of these countries, you're immediately eligible and you can claim a $10 bonus after completing your first offer. Just remember to enable app tracking so your progress is recorded. So when you're ready to play, just follow the instructions in the description or on the pinned comment and go to freecash.com and get playing and earning now. Thank you. Now from here, we jump over to Harrenhal. We see the ominous black goat, which normally appears before the arrival of Alice Rivers. Black goats are a symbol of Satan, and in medieval times, he was thought to take their form. But now he just appears as a white dog with a polo shirt. However, it sets the stage really well, and we see soldiers moving through the castle. They're looking for Aemond, but all they get is Alice. Yes, that is a good question. This moment actually pulls from later in the book, and they've moved it forward so it can be something that happens alongside Aemond's recovery. But here it says, in the Riverlands, Sir Criston Cole abandoned Harrenhal, striking south along the western shore of the God's Eye, with 3,600 men behind him. Death, disease, and desertion had thinned the ranks that had ridden forth from King's Landing. Prince Aemond had already departed, flying Vhagar. The castle stood empty no more than 3 days before Lady Sabbath the Frey swooped down to seize it. Inside she found only Alice Rivers, the wet nurse and purported witch who had warmed Prince Aemond's bed during his days at Harrenhal, and now claimed, better not say that just yet because it is a bit of a spoiler. But yes, the paragraph that follows after this spoils a major plot point, so I won't read it, but we will save it for the spoiler section.
I'm nice like that.
However, was it just me, or was Alice looking a lot like Alicent? I think her dress here is very similar to the former Green Queen, and even her name is clearly done to play up the idea that she is similar to Alicent. Kinda like how Aemond and Daemon share similar arcs and storylines, and if you take the D from Daemon and put it on the end of the word, you get the name Aemond. You get it, that is subtext. Aemond clearly has mother issues as well, and I think that Alice is trying to seduce him. This will strengthen her claim to the castle, which we now know is what she's secretly after. Daemon also saw himself with an eye patch just before he met Alice Rivers, and it foreshadowed the future. On Instagram, Gail Rankin, who also plays Alice, reposted a story of someone noticing how her dresses are now more similar to Simon Strong's clothing patterns. She looks a lot more regal and is clearly aiming towards being a lady. She also talks about Harrenhal's history, most notably
in service to Harren the Cruel.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, yeah? But this is the first time that I think the character's been referred to as that. Even searching his name through the books, he's always been referred to as Harren the Black. Now, he's a figure who stood up to Aegon the Conqueror, and Harrenhal was burned because of it. I think it shows, though, how history is written by the victor, and those that go on remember the losers as something else. She's got a whole, Queen of the Dead vibe going on, and even uses a stone to set off a Batman special attack. Throwing it, it awakens the bats, and they swarm the soldiers before Alice disappears. Now, the castle is plagued by people hunting Aemond due to Rhaenyra putting a bounty on his head. This is a slight change up from the book, and there it was put on Aegon's, but I do like the idea that these forces are constantly coming in. We then cut to Aemond having a trip to see his brother like Daemon did. During Season 2, he was haunted by Jacerys, who was of course rotting in Season 1. Upon waking up, Aemond says his brother was half burned, and it draws an interesting parallel. Both Aemond and Daemon believe that they should have had the throne, and both had a decaying brother who haunts them in their dreams. During Season 2, I did say as well that I believe these dreams are set off because the bed's made of weirwood wood, which comes from the weirwood tree. This is what we see later when the assassins climb up the cliffs, and it's from this that Daemon had his visions of Game of Thrones. Seasons 1 to 8, the complete collection, available on 4K Blu-ray right there. Available at all good bookshops. At this point, Aemond then grabs the cat's paw dagger from his bedside, and we still don't know how this ends up in the main show. Available on all good box sets. I do even wonder though if they'll expose the inscription here at Harrenhal, and this will reveal the truth of Aegon's dreams. We have theorized that Alice may end up giving birth to Brynden Rivers, who is the three-eyed raven. He appeared in the montage from last season, and it's obviously a big part of Game of Thrones. I feel like Alice may pass her abilities on to him, along with the knowledge of what's on the knife. This could be how Brynden knows so much in Game of Thrones, and it's going to be very interesting to see where this dagger ends up at. Anyway, Aemond is clearly haunted by his brother, and I do wonder if he may have a change of heart about things, just like how Daemon did. He's also haunted by visions of Helaena. She too appeared during Daemon's visions, and we learn her psychic abilities help her to communicate with those going through these trances.
He's at Harrenhal. No, he was there, but he's fled. He's vanished. I've seen him.
Later in the episode, we see Alice doing some cross-stitch while Aemond sleeps as well, and shout out to this Twitter account that spotted that it's remarkably similar to Helena's pastime. We will talk about their similarities more in the spoiler section, but yes, very important to pay attention to. Anyway, we then travel to the Red Keep, which is where we see they've brought in cats. This was suggested by Alan last week, and it's such a nice little progression of the D-plot. The rats represented the lords and traitors of the realm who'd overrun the castle and were corrupting it from the inside. Now the cats are here though, and they're more sort of the stealthy hunter who's looking to clean things up. We see this idea of hidden hunting eyes in the girl Orwell passes who observes them going out to Alicent. I believe this is one of Myzaria's spies, and she's a mirror of the green spy that we see later watching Daemon. As we learn though, Orwell has brought out some morning tea, which Alicent wants to give to Helaena, who is pregnant. I have to say mate, totally missed that last week. I was reading the comments like, oh man, what an idiot. I spent so long focusing on the wig and totally missed this big plot point in the episode. But yeah, sometimes when you do these videos, you think you're an absolute genius for spotting loads of stuff and putting it all together. Look at me, mate, I've noticed all this stuff. And then you miss like the most obvious thing in the world. So thank you for correcting me, and I'm sure this video will be full of things I missed as well, which will be the title of the videos going forward. House of the Dragon Season 3 Episode 5 Breakdown, Things I Missed. But yeah, I think the reason I didn't really pick up on it is because it's not something that was ever in the book. In that, Helena had Mela already, so the thought just didn't cross my mind, and I thought the character was absent from the show. In my defense as well, George R. R. Martin also put out his blog that basically spoiled all the season, and he said Maelor isn't in the show either, so I think I've just had that hanging over my head that there's nothing in the series to do with the character. But to be honest, I actually prefer that he's kind of kept out of the way, and sort of people are worried that he's going to be used as a political pawn or kill before he can ever really have a chance at life. The child being a boy would have a claim to the throne, and since Joffrey isn't really that strong of a claim to it, Aegon's son would probably seem more legitimate. Now I say Aegon's son, but the kid is also potentially Aemond's. It's difficult to say what the timelines are like in the series, because yeah, it is a bit all over the place. I think since season 2, we've maybe gone like 2 months, but even then, that could be completely wrong. The areas of Westeros take ages to travel to, and even a trip to Dragonstone takes a large number of days. Could also be a couple of weeks as well, and I think we probably need that nailed down before we say who the daddy is. But I have to say that Aegon clearly said his cock had exploded after the Battle of Rook's Rest, so if it is after that, then it has to be Aemond's. Orwell then tells Alicent that he can't help her anymore, and though he's given her this plan T, he can no longer aid her. Alicent then takes the drink over and says,
She will kill it. She will have no choice.
Now there is some irony here, as Alicent is basically killing the kid too. The baby just doesn't stand a chance, as you've got its grandmother saying it has to die now, so it doesn't die later. Alicent has of course employed these tactics before as well, and she made a maid drink the tea after being set upon by Aegon. Alicent ends up having to swig it herself later, which gives these scenes a sense of poetic justice. She drinks the drink she's tried to force on others, and it's quite a nice bit of full circle writing. She also mentions how it delivered Rhaenyra from disgrace. This happened during season 1, where she was given it after sneaking off with Daemon. Alicent is also worried the child could be used as a shield, and the baby represents lots of things politically. The Blacks can use him for their own ends, hold the kid hostage, and the Greens could potentially get them and do what they end up doing with Daeron. Alicent just wants out the entire mess, but Helena stands her ground and says no. She of course had her kid killed in front of her before, and yeah, you can totally understand why she wouldn't want to lose another child. Orwell at this point in the book was also in jail, as Rhaenyra threw him in the black cells. So I do wonder if this will actually happen if Mysaria does tell the Queen. She is clearly playing both sides, and I don't think she'd mind throwing Orwell under the bus to kind of cover for herself. Helena is also possibly hesitant to take it, as like Alicent, this is her last chance to raise a kid as she sees fit. Just like Rhaenyra has Joffrey. If this is Aegon's kid, then this is the last chance he could have to have a son, as again his cock's exploded, and she could be being protective because of that as well. But at this point, we then jump to a West Wing march through the corridors and join Rhaenyra and Sabbath the Frey. She's annoyed she hasn't got the Harrenhal she was promised by Jace, and to make matters worse, Rhaenyra has promised Frey's castle to whoever brings in Aemond's head. So yeah, pretty bad, and at this point, Frey ends up joining the council. In case you don't know, she's who owns the crossing called the Twins, which are shown on her sigil. We saw the armies marching across it at the end of season 2, and this was the Starks led by Cregan. Cregan actually marched after Rhaenyra's rule in the book, and their Sabbatha also met with Roddy and his Winter Wolves as they passed through the Twins. But things have been truncated somewhat. I did wonder as well if the Freys feeling screwed over here starts off their rivalry, and it may be a straw added to the camel's back that leads to the Red Wedding. They talk about the Hedge Knights as well, which yeah, we saw more of during A Night of the Seven Kingdoms. But yeah, Sabbatha is on the council, and though that happens in the book, it's much later on under a totally different ruler. Much like how Torrhen becomes the Lord of Coin here, which didn't happen at this point either. We then cut to said council and see a cat moving about. But I caught you in a continuity error, mate, because it jumps on the table and then we cut to the wider shot and the cat is gone. And I hate when there's massive continuity errors and stuff, because we all saw it change.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
Adam and Baylor have spoken to the farmers, though, who had their lands burned, and they say they were certain it was Vhagar. Now, I've tried to hold off doing the theory time jingle, but I do have a theory time for you right now. So, we do know that Aemond is dreaming of his dragon, and we get a shot of his eye later when the character wakes up. Now, because of this, I did wonder if Aemond was walking and controlling the dragon as he sleeps. In the book at this point, he's burning the Riverlands just as he did to Sharp Point in a fit of rage. So, it's a nice way to keep that part of the book canon, if that is indeed what's happening. We have seen this ability before though due to the link writers have with their dragons, and I do feel like that could be the case. Anyway, that's in the theory time.
That's why I fucked your bitch, you fat motherfucker.
What? Now we also see Mysaria as well, who Manly mentions as the White Worm. This is the character's nickname, and she has worm stitching on her collar to play into this. Now, though Rhaenyra wants to hunt Vhagar and Aemond, there's lots of strange things going on in the kingdom. Gold cloaks are turning up dead in Flea Bottom, and I love how Manly says it's full of undesirables, which gets a raised eyebrow from Mysaria. This is where she used to operate on the Street of Silk, and it's somewhere that Daemon used to frequent. The stare from Daemon as well is very, very funny, as it continues the beef that he had with him from last week. The Rogue Prince then mentions that there was an outbreak of violence at Dragon's Gate. This foreshadows a major plot point in the book, which I do expect might happen near the end of the season. As well as this, the murders of the City Watch members is very similar to what happened to Daenerys. The Unsullied were picked off by the Sons of the Harpy and the Marine, and it just all plays in the idea of guerrilla warfare. Orwell also delivers the news that the bridges are being destroyed. Rhaenyra demands that Adam and Baelor go back on the hunt for Aemond, but neither have Aegon slept. Baelor is still surefire that she can fly though, and I think since losing Jace, she's just thrown herself into the hunt. Baelor is all that really remains of Jace for Rhaenyra as well, but she's kind of cast to the side ever since his death. Rhaenyra wants Daemon to go as well, but he refuses and decides to hunt down who's killing his men. Soldiers are in a bit of an uproar as they haven't been paid yet, and they need some inspiration. In general, it's very clear that Rhaenyra is turning a blind eye to the kingdom, and this is probably going to cause more trouble for her. Instead of being focused on what's going on outside, she needs to be focused on what's happening in the walls instead, and there are a lot of pieces being set up here that are going to pay off down the line, and book readers, if you know, you know.
There is a disturbance in your city, and you, yourself, are its likely cause.
Also, shoutouts to Mac Durferman 9291 on our last video, who pointed out that the graffiti had to be from someone noble or connected to a house. It's rare for the common born to be literate, so this was the first clue that it was someone educated. We see this in the messages that they're passing back and forth with Aemond, and also with what's written on the wall at the end. Daemon is just trying to get her to see though that the graffiti means nothing and to stop giving it so much focus. But Rhaenyra's shame is also her greatest weakness. The strong sons are what brought a lot of things into question in the first place, and she's hyper-focused on that. It's making everything fall apart, and she's losing her grip on her rule. We then learn her handmaidens brought her news that Joffrey's returned, and though he's asked for her, she says that she's busy. It shows a big level of detachment, as she hasn't seen the kid for ages. Or a week, or potentially 8 months. Again, no idea how timelines work in this show, but she delays seeing him, which shows the severe trauma from both Luke and Jace's death. Anyway, we cut to double act Larys and Aegon, with the latter refusing to go back to Rook's Rest. He's out hunting Aemond as well, and he blames him for everything. But let's be honest, mate, if the guy encounters him, he doesn't stand a chance. I do wonder as well if Larys is purposely allowing him to go in the wrong direction, as he does seem like a learned man and would probably know which way west was. At this point, he's doing everything he can do to get to Braavos, and I think he's just letting him go off because he knows at some point that he'll get lost and will have to turn around. Aegon also channels John Locke.
Stop telling me what I can't do!
Don't ever tell me what I can't do, ever!
We see some part of Aegon's potential as well, which is unlocked later on. Like Kristen, he's also set on either finding Aemond and killing him or dying, just like how Kristen has kind of resigned to the fact that he isn't coming back from this. Going back to the Red Keep, we then see the building of an alliance I wasn't expecting.
Do you want to form an alliance with me?
Absolutely, I do.
Good, excellent.
But both reflect each other really nicely, I think. Both were imprisoned by Rhaenyra, and both are pretty powerless. Mysaria is all about playing both sides, so she comes out on top, and Alicent ends up owing her at the end. I actually wonder as well if Mysaria is the one who's going to discover them next week, open up that passage, and basically save their lives. Here Alicent then talks about the indignities that they've had to endure, which is something that Mysaria has also seen as well. I think Mysaria sees her as a sister in waiting, and someone who may vouch for her if the war doesn't go the Black's way. Mysaria must be aware that things aren't really working out well for her, and she's just hedging her bets. Sort of a similar situation to Orwell, and they're just doing what works for them rather than the kingdom, which will of course cause fractures in the Black's leadership. Alicent drinking it, yeah, that's obviously a reversal on season 1 where she made the maid have it, but it also means that she can't use it on Helena at all. So this baby is coming one way or another. Or is it? Well, I do have a theory time, but I'm going to save that for the spoiler section. But for the moment, Alicent is trying to get Myzari to help her and her daughter escape. Jumping across to Kristen's gang, we then get a brilliant shot of a spider in a web. The characters are all heading towards a trap, and ultimately, this will seal their fate.
It's a trap!
And I don't think Kristen even minds it. At this point though, we hear Gwaine telling a story about Aemond and how he let him win a game when they were kids. This is something we kind of see later on, and though he's like, "Oh mate, I love when people beat me, mate. Victory is great for other people. I love when Rhaenyra gets more views than me, mate. I'm glad everyone's doing so well. Everyone's succeeding." And you can tell he's kind of trying to hold back his anger. The idea of letting others think they have victory is of course something Aemond's also done himself, and he let Daemon believe he'd surrender so he could go and take Tumbleton. Gwaine talking about just heading back to Old Town with Kristen also kinda highlights the hypocrisy the nobles have that Kristen brought up last week. He said how the highborn play war, then return to their lovely feather beds, while the ones who suffer are the common folk. They see everything as being something you can just take a step back from, and that victory isn't that important because, yeah, nothing much changes for them. I think what this conversation really plays into though is that sometimes winning is not just worth the hassle. Gwaine would probably have had to deal with a meltdown from Aemond, so it was easier just conceding defeat. Aemond conceded defeat and made Rhaenyra think she had a victory, when really it's been a nightmare for the character. The idea of not seeking victory also plays into Kristen's arc here. The lad is just like, "Oh mate, I hope I die, mate, just sick of this shit. Kinda wanna die just to piss Alicent off a bit. Hope it's a big over-the-top thing they sing songs about," and she's like, "Oh mate, I lost a proper good guy there, I'm gutted." Which does kind of make him a bit of a loser, mate. Gwaine also says,
"A knight of your stature would be most welcome to serve our house there."
This is where you really see that Kristen is no longer interested in serving, and he's no longer resigned to that position. Mainly because he mentioned last week that he saw what happens when your master's house falls on hard times or if you fall out of favour. But the conversation is then broken up by crow's feet in the ground. This takes out their horses, and it's the first trap they find that evens the playing fields. Jumping across to Alicent, we then see her with a towel on her crotch, likely feeling the effects of the morning after tea. Playing with her necklace, she then realises that this can be used as a way to bribe the maid. The necklace is also symbolic. It's one for the faith of the Seven, and Alicent is heavily religious, to the point even the table here has one of their symbols on a candle holder. But her using this shows she's not resigned her fate to the gods, and is taking agency for her and her daughter. This ultimately buys her some costumes, but the gods do not plan for things to go that way. Jumping to Flea Bottom, we then hear the Lord's Commander talking about how the gold cloaks were found. They cut their bowels as well as their throats, and they died in agony, choking on their own shit. This is a fate that awaits him as well, and it's quite a harrowing end. Daemon then hints that the murders are connected to the raid that we saw last week. The harsh treatment of the small folk is something that could have made them angry, and we do see how Rhaenyra's struggling to keep a lid on it. It's also funny that Daemon is scolding Luther for acting with a heavy hand when we saw Daemon do the same thing in season 1. He's called the Prince of Flea Bottom as well, which is the name from the book. However, there it was Lord of Flea Bottom. We also see that here as well, and watch as a girl spies on the pair. It's the same as how Varys used kids to spread messages or get information in the main show. Running to the messengers, we then see that they're communicating by carrier pigeon. Following the bird to Aemond, we then learn that Tumbletown's securing its walls. They're also forcing conscripts and trying to build an army, which could lead to further uprisings. I like how he washes his hand after touching the pigeon as well, as he's such a goddamn clean freak. We then see his Aemond as Darren going through his family history. Well, the High Towers anyway. He runs through all the houses of the realm, and it's very similar to Egg in A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms. He knew all the houses because one day he might have to rule, and the noble lords must know who they command. Darren then mentions House Gardner, who, like the High Towers, were an ancient house. I do wonder though if Aemond kind of respects them, as they decided to fight against Aegon, whereas the High Towers didn't. He also mentions House Dane, and a descendant of Dane, Sir Arthur, would help set off a chain of events that led to the Targaryen rule ending when he kidnapped Lyanna Stark. Then talks about Miriam Martell, who Aemond clearly idolizes. She was known as the Yellow Toad of Dawn, and wasn't exactly, wasn't seen as someone to admire when they look back at the houses. 80 years old at the time, Aegon arrived and she refused to bow to the Conqueror. Blind, hideous, and hairless, she ruled Dorne and would rather have seen her people dead than being alive as Targaryen slaves. She was criticised as being very, very cowardly and seen as a figure who fought through deceit. Much like Aemond, during the invasion she ended up abandoning her castle and when it was taken returned and had her enemies slaughtered while they slept. She employed scorched earth tactics, much like what the Rivermen are doing in this episode. This story also reminded me a lot of Napoleon's failed invasion of Russia where he entered Moscow and found it and the Kremlin deserted, which is an interesting parallel. They also blamed her leadership on her gender, and Aemond of course doesn't like Rhaenyra because she's a woman. So it's strange that he idolizes her, but it shows how much he hates the Targaryens. He also sees fighting with deceit as being something strategic and that you should seek victory at no cost, and never apologize for it like we see here.
Is she a hero then? Or a villain?
To Daemon though, being someone who slaughters people while they sleep is bad, but Aemond sees things the other way. Those who stood up to Aegon were seen as heroes, and people had to fight this way to stand against their dragons. Dorne is still unbroken because of this, and she achieved victory at the cost of honour, which is how Aemond will fight as well. It speaks to the shades of grey in war, and I did find it ironic that he's slagging off the Targaryens while trying to plant one on the throne simply because his hair isn't the typical golden locks. That just seems much more accepting to him, and it's similar how the Strongs were also rejected too. But Aemond and the religion have really opposed the Targaryens, and that's since Maegor the Cruel burned the Sept. The Faith Militant have also been opposed to them throughout time as well, and the rivalry is something that's a massive thing in Game of Thrones. We then see Daemon beats him in the game. This game is Savas, and shoutouts to Quinn the GM on Twitter for pointing out that it actually came to Westeros pretty late in the main series. It was first mentioned in A Feast for Crows as being a craze in Dorne having come over from Volantis. It's also important to remember that during the First Dornish War, Maria's forces killed Rhaenys. Rhaenyra looked up to Visenya, and it's a cool parallel how Aemond styling himself on the Dornish tactics of that war, and the Queen has lost 2 dragons. Daemon then apologises and says he was lucky, and I love the little micro actions he does here. It's something that he did last week as well, and you can tell he's constantly living on a knife's edge. Just the little actions here show how he's used to living in an abusive household, and he can instantly spot when Aemond's triggered. So he'll tell the maids to leave and stuff, and try and reset the game, but Aemond kind of calms himself down, after smashing the pieces of course. I do even wonder if this Aryan might end up killing Aemond when things come to a head. We saw last week how the dragon lunged at him at the end of the episode, and the creatures are emotionally bonded with their riders. So Daemon may end up becoming overwhelmed with anxiety when Aemond starts to lose it, and the dragon might kill a knight to protect him. You also see him sniffing that pot all the time as a way to calm himself down. I even wonder if the Blacks might put something inside of it that enrages him, and this could lead to him going off the deep end. Like they could fart in it or something. It's here that he then reveals Darren's coin, which he uses to pay the assassins with at the end.
Do you think it a good likeness?
Nah, not really, mate. Don't really look anything like him. Now it's also important to bear in mind that Daemon hasn't asked for any of this, and it paints a target on his back now because his face is being used to pay killers. I think this is something that's really going to change things for Rhaenyra as well. Last week we saw how reluctant she was to kill the Daemon double and even wanted to send him to the wall. Now though, he's a real contender for the throne since Aemond and Aegon are in the wild. So I do think that when push comes to shove, she'll realise she has to kill him. If she learns Helena's pregnant as well, this may push her to kill the child, and it's these little things that really escalate the stakes. Reminds me of when I launched my own coin, Spoil Coin, which you can use to buy stuff at our merch store below. Just go on there, use your real money, pay for it to get a Spoil Coin, and then use that. Well, I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, but basically we have shirts at the merch store inspired by the show. Yay! We've got one for Syrax, Vega, Caraxes, along with our newly launched Queen of the Bastards one. These are some of my favourite designs we've ever done, and if you haven't picked up a shirt in a while, then definitely check these out because we've got improved shirt and print quality and they'll fit you perfectly. Plus, we have big discounts as well, and the more money you save, the more money you can use to buy Spoil Coin one day.
From the lowliest of the faithful to Boris Baratheon himself.
You what?
Boros.
Baratheon.
Lancel Lannister. Gods, what a stupid name. Thank the gods for Bessie and her tits. I was never so alive as when I was winning this throne. Or so dead now that I've whipped.
Sounded a little bit sad on that one. I kind of feel Feel bad for our Robert. Anyway, we jump to Helena in the garden with her daughter Jacerys. We see a caterpillar climbing on a leaf, and Helena is of course obsessed with butterflies. They're a symbol of transformation, and the caterpillar changes and takes flight when it becomes one. I do wonder as well if this is symbolic of her story, which we'll probably see towards the end of the season. She also mentions deadly nightshade and how it would mean death if they ate it. I did wonder as well if this was setting things up and they may use this poison on themselves or even as a weapon. Helena seems to really want her own agency though, which is why she doesn't drink the moon tea. During the Battle of Blackwater Bay, Cersei was also ready to poison Tommen instead of letting him be captured. So the nightshade being introduced here could be her using the poison on herself or her child as opposed to a blood and cheese situation which could end up happening again. Speaking of blood and cheese, Alicent then tells her about the plan to flee, and they do talking about using the passages that they used. We've seen these throughout the show, and it's how Rhaenyra went into King's Landing during season 1. Created by Maegor the Cruel, these passages were a way for him to slink about the castle. But obviously, since Blood and Cheese attacked, some have been sealed up, which we do see at the end. Helena must also choose to leave Jacerys behind. Her room's guarded, and it means that they won't be able to sneak off. Alicent clearly lies later on as well, so she'll go with the plan, but I think really she doesn't have any intent of taking her.
You said the nurse would meet us with Jacerys. And so she will, at the other end. Come now.
I think Alicent realises that Rhaenyra won't kill her because she's a girl, and she's only interested in killing boys as they're what could threaten her rule. However, I do have a theory about what will happen to Jacerys, which I will say for the spoiler section. Jumping to Baelor and Adam, we then get a nice full circle moment at the farm when Chris and the gang arrive here later. Seeing Vhagar's footprint, this is something Cole later spots as well. But will the dragon be a protector or killer? Only time will tell. Again, this is just like the book as well, where Vhagar and Aemond burned the Riverlands. Baelor and Adam are also talking about the path that was meant for them. Baelor was going to become queen one day, but this was stripped away because of the war. It reflects the conversation with Aegon later on, where he whinges about everything he's lost. But Adam at least provides comfort and says worst comes to worst, they'll fly away to exile. Now they are half brother and sister, so like I don't want to say they might end up together, but in this crazy world of Game of Thrones, who knows at this point? We then see Aemond awakened by a vision of Vhagar and cut to Alice sewing at his bedside. Shoutouts to Think a Girl on Twitter for pointing out the similarities with Helena here, who also did something similar. Aemond kinda hobbles about, hearing grunting and groaning, and it does sound a lot like his dragon. However, the beast seems to have gone, and now it's just him and Alice. Alice is like the controlling girl cutting Aemond off from his pals, and we see that she wants to keep him cooped up here. She even tells him that Rhaenyra's taking King's Landing and delivers the news that Aegon could be dead. Here we see how he sees his brother as a sign of torment, and you could even hear him laughing when he woke up. It's clear the pair both have a rivalry, and Aegon also blames his brother for his issues. Aemond is a second son, which in this world often makes someone far more ambitious. Otto was the second son, as was Daemon, and even Tormund Manderly was one as well. This means they're not heirs to their houses, and they have to seek out their own ways to be successful. So it often drives them to push further, but all Aemond's ever cared about is his mother's love. In a kind of creepy way.
Sometimes the child that grieves her is the one a mother loves best.
Now Alice is playing into his need for love and his desire for that to be from a motherly figure. Even at the brothel, the madam he sought after was an older woman, and the place itself was called Mother's. I know we've mentioned that before as well, but I think, it's worth bringing up to kind of hammer home that point. Alice then says that she doesn't believe Aegon's dead, and even Aemond says that he's not meant to be either. Like Daemon, he sees visions and possibly saw a future where Aegon's king once again. This seems like why he's confused, and I feel like the vision that Aemond sees here, like how Daemon experienced, it will kind of make them understand their brother more. Also seeking comfort, we have Aegon with Larys, which is a lot more direct. Larys just lays it all out, and he does say he's been a bit of a shit. At this point though, Aegon feels very hard done by because he was held back from the tournaments while his brother was taken under Cole's wing. He even excelled at High Valyrian, while Aegon had trouble doing it.
And Mother indulged him. She loved him more, is the truth of it. Poor darling Aemond and his scabby little eye.
I love this line as it shows the other things the other ones who had it good. But Aegon could basically do what he wanted, while Aemond lost his eye as a child and had to claim Vhagar himself. Aegon even bullied Aemond and made fun of him for not yet having a dragon, which pushed him to do something dangerous. We also saw in season 1 that young Aegon was actually decent with a sword, but was distracted by women. Aegon also bullied Aemond at the brothel in season 2. So they've just always had this rivalry, and Larys later says how he was surrounded by his sycophant friends, who we did see during season 2, but they're all dead now. I think what it hammers home one, though, is that Aegon and Aemond are more like each other than they realise. And I am kind of on Larys' side here. To me, Aegon definitely had it easier than Aemond, as he was pushed to the throne, had the most beautiful dragon in the kingdom, and also didn't lose his eye. Who really had it hard, though, was Larys, who was born with a clubfoot. His older brother was the one that was loved by all, and he even hooked up with the queen. That's what led to this entire thing in the first place, but Larys has shown that survival and strength are often built from adversity. Larys outlived both his dad and brother, and though he killed them, it showed he wasn't the weak one. Telling Aegon he's a terrible man, he then heads back to Rook's Rest while we head to the Sept. This is a place that's pretty much been a sanctuary where Alicent and Rhaenyra have comforted each other, and Alicent has often come here to seek advice from the gods. Daemon is actually very surprised she's here, and it shows how desperate the queen is. Like Aegon, she has to at least pretend to be interested in the faith, or she may be going to the gods to try and seek counsel, but I do think it's all for the image. Speaking in High Valyrian as well, I have to say, they're absolutely nailing the pronunciation. I know it's a made-up language, mate, but I'd imagine this is what it sounds like, and by the sounds of it, they're absolutely killing it. Rhaenyra and Daemon then go back and forth over the state of things, and it's him being real with her about how she'll always face opposition. Kind of plays into a theme of the episode about how the characters wish they were in the position of someone else, whether it's Aegon and Aemond or Rhaenyra seeking peace. She kind of wishes she had it as easy as her father did. However, if you go back to him, he was a bit, jealous of the other kings who had these big glorious wars. So he focused on his models and fantasized about glory, whereas Rhaenyra just wants a nice relaxing time. She then taunts him by saying he needs to be the Daemon of songs and find out who's working against them. She's basically saying, boy, you better lock in. Both then talk about how the faith is against them. It shows how they're against the faith themselves, and Daemon even says she is more than this, which is a double meaning sentence in that she's both more than the faith and more than the defeated attitude that she has. Going off to Rook's Rest, we then see that Aegon's back where he started, and he agrees to take the ship. It opens up a brand new opportunity, and Larys gives him an apple as a sign of goodwill. Their fates then change as well, as they get to see another friendly face, and I know I hated the lad. I know I said for 3 seasons straight I fucking hate this guy, but I was so happy seeing Tywin Lannister. Yes, somehow Tywin Lannister returned, and in the book he was actually at King's Landing when Rhaenyra captured it. So big fate. I'll not spoil too much about what happened there in case it ends up happening in the show. But yeah. They basically used him as a way to try and find out where the gold was. Alicent and Helaena then make their first escape attempt, which is stopped by Mysaria. Playing to her, she then reminds her of her past and how she played all the sides and wasn't just the queen's lapdog. Even in season 1, we saw how she brokered things with Otto, and now his daughter's offering a friendship. Alicent knows that Rhaenyra will turn nasty and probably won't want a whore in the household. In the book, Daemon and Mysaria are actually sleeping together at this point, and I do wonder if that will come into the story as a divide between the couple.
The crown is a weight that crushes.
Mysaria likely suspects she'll do horrible things as well, and knows that Daemon and Rhaenyra are 2 sides of the same coin. Mysaria is also similar to Criston Cole. Both have been used by nobles on either side of this conflict, and both are at the mercy of how the war goes and the temperament of their masters. Helaena also says she wants to see the moon, and Alicent makes her go to the window. Also wonder if this is setting up something later that we'll touch upon in the spoiler section, but this is a location where she also spoke to Aemond at. She then goes to look at the caterpillar in a cage, which kind of sums up about her being held prisoner. Rhaenyra then finally gets around to seeing Joffrey, but the lad is sound asleep. She's gone to the Sept to stress instead of spending the time that she has left with her son, and the war is costing her everything. We then see Criston and co passing the farm from earlier, and then them making their way through the marshes. They find bodies that in the book were the victims of the Battle of Lakeshore, aka Fish Feed. They're picked on by leeches, and people are left to die, while dragons potentially could swoop down at any moment. Like the book, the men died of disease, and some even fled, switching sides as this march was deadly and hopeless. Criston also hopes to die in glory, but this is far from it, as the dead are just left to rot ungraciously. Meanwhile, we see assassins scaling the cliffs of Harrenhal. Now these might be the Greyjoys, as one mentions taking Alice Rivers' assault wife. This attempt also fails as well, and Aemond arrives and takes them all out. Guy just doesn't mess around, and even wounded, he's still able to beat them. Much like Daemon, it seems the visions and dreams have given him a new purpose in life. The guy was obviously trained by the best of the best of the best, sir, and his brother's also showing that he's not taking things lying down. That's what we see with Tywin and Larys as they debate about what to do next. The Lannister wants to take Aegon to Lannisport, and at this point in the story, Lannisport has been sacked by Dalton Greyjoy. So I do wonder exactly how safe it is to head to Castle Rock via Lannisport. Tywin doesn't want to head out to Bravos either, as he's been there and it sounds like he got a bit freaky. Yeah, yo! Larys also sees right through Tywin, as keeping the king at Castle Rock would be a huge boom for House Lannister. With the leader of Rook's Rest killed here though, I do wonder if Aegon will try and make his own little kingdom here. Naturally, if heard he's alive and at this castle, Rhaenyra will attack it faster than the Ringwraiths attack Frodo. But either way, it seems like Aegon has got his groove back, and when looking at Sunfire's scale, he ends up stabbing Jonas with it after the bully finds his crown. Now, I was hoping that we'd get a moment where Sunfire rises up when Aegon gives a rousing speech, but I think this little killing here shows how capable he still is.
You will call me Your Grace.
We then jump to the Gold Cloaks and see how angry they aren't getting paid, but Daemon promises they'll get double when they win. I was a bit disappointed with how this moment went, as Daemon, well, mostly always wins and gets what he wants, to a certain degree anyway. I'd also hoped that some of the Gold Cloaks would peel away like Kristen's men, kinda highlighting the slow loss of King's Landing. He talks a good game about how the 7 kingdoms will become 9 and then 12, and it speaks to his plans last week to take Essos. However, it's all false promises and the men are killed after torturing a captive. Chris and his team then finally arrive at the river to see that the bridge has been destroyed. My, how they turn tables. We then see a black Targaryen banner at the bridge, and they realise they've crossed and destroyed the bridge behind them. They realise they cannot delay the rivermen going to Tumbleton anymore, and we're going to get a big fight come the end of the season. I hope so anyway. We then cut to what's a pretty rough torture scene in which they try and get the guy to snitch on his conspirators. Reminded me a lot of what happened to Guy Fawkes, and he too was put in a similar position after the failure of the gunpowder plot. It's also, of course, very similar to Aegon torturing Blood after the events of Blood and Cheese. I like how this time it's Daemon doing the torturing when he was the one who set up the Blood and Cheese plot.
Again, it's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
It's in this that they then learn about Darren and how he's now being pushed towards the throne. In the book, the plotting against Rhaenyra at King's Landing was suspected to be orchestrated by Larys, yet though it's of course switched to Aemond. With Darren's coin being present and the crown having no money, I also expect that Aemond wants Darren to swoop in as the Grand Liberator that's here to give people money. This would be very similar to what the show did with Rhaenyra in Season 2, where she sent the boats of food and the guy could be sending coin. Going back to Kristen, Gwaine is being real about it and saying how the company is greatly outnumbered. For every one of them, there's 200 rivermen and they'll be marching towards certain death. But Kristen wants that. He's known from the start this is a one-way trip and isn't even bothered about going back to a life that could await him after this. He's been in his feelings about dying to dragons ever since seeing how deadly they were at Rook's Rest. His host hasn't got one, and any side he fights against right now could have more than one. His only hope is to fight with guerrilla warfare, as an open battle could mean dragonfire. All he will do is serve in their wars, and throughout this conflict, he switched sides a couple of times. Well, he switched sides from the blacks to the greens, but even now, he doesn't feel like he's that loyal. All he has to look forward to is death, and he wants to be known as the realm's greatest warrior. He wants to die as such and have a death so glorious they'll sing songs about him, but it won't be in the service of any house, and it will be on his own terms. And it will finally show Alicent, mate. She will be gutted. She'll be crying, going, oh, that song about Kristen, I lost the best man ever. But actually, don't think she's even thought about him since he left, to be fair. I'm not sure it paints him in the noble light he's expecting, as he's led his men on a ruinous mission that just means death. But yeah, we then see Alan advising Rhaenyra. When Daemon tosses the coin down, we also get a good look at the book, which discusses some of the characters in the dance. Lady Rhaena is there, with it saying she was last seen amongst smoke and dragonfire. Rhaenyra then realises there's another contender to the throne, and she's going to have to push off another child coming for her reign. Cutting to Kristen, we see him giving a speech about how much they've suffered, but how they won't lose hope. However, we know that he's already accepted death, and we then see Gwaine has decided to go home. Now this is a big change up from the book, but they could be doing something that eventually aligns with his fate. This speech reminds me a lot of the moment in 1917 where British soldiers listened to a man singing before heading to the trenches for an attack. The idea of there being no hope is also shown in Alicent and Helena. The new cats of the kingdom have been roaming for rats, and one cat uncovers a secret passage. Ultimately, this leads to a dead end and them being blocked inside, but I do wonder if the cat or Mysaria will help them get out of it. Surrounded by darkness, it then leaves them in a perilous position. Daemon also loses hope when he comes across his men. Laid out in a feast for traitors, we close out the entry with him having no more people loyal to his cause. The walls are closing in, The knives are coming from the dark, and this Last Supper is a very harrowing image, especially with the religious implications it has. And we do know it obviously came before the death of Jesus, so symbolically, there's going to be a big death coming, I imagine. Now that ends the episode on quite a bummer note and takes us to the spoiler section. So if you don't want to know, mate, you crazy cat, get yourself out of here, you crazy goose. Anyway, so the paragraph I couldn't touch upon before reveals that Alice is indeed pregnant. Yes, Alice in the book does have Aemond's child, and again, that's probably what's going to lead to Brynin Rivers. If Aemond is also indeed the father of Helena's kid as well, then we have 2 babies tied to the character. That's 4, but 2. Now that kind of takes us into what happens with Helena. In the book, her child Maelor ends up being beheaded, and Rhaenyra apparently then sends this to Helena in a chamber pot. This then causes Helena to jump out the window, and she falls on the spikes below. So this kind of ties in the window stuff and how she's been scared to go near it throughout the season. Though Maelor hasn't been in the show, I think threatening to kill a kid could be something that causes these kind of issues. I do even wonder if she's going to take the deadly nightshade and then throw herself off the balcony. We have seen that shot in the teaser of her looking up and almost like she's in a trance, so I do wonder if that's going to happen. As for Jacerys, I think she'll be kept at King's Landing and then will probably end up marrying Aegon III. I think that's something that makes the most sense and is probably something they have planned for the character. Speaking of marriage, Baela ends up with Alan in the book, but I do think that they could do it with Adam instead. That's kind of what they seem to be teasing. They are getting close and stuff. They both got dragons. Talking about going off into exile just makes the most sense. Anyway, that wraps up the video, and I'd of course love to hear your thoughts on the entry, and if there's anything we missed, then you know what to do. I'll be kicking myself right now, I'm sure, as I'm reading it. Please drop a like on the video as well, and if you want to follow us on Instagram and keep up to date with what we're doing, then make sure that you check us out at Heavy Spoilers. Did you know as well that members of the channel also get early access to videos like this every single week, and if you click the join button, you get at least 1 breakdown a week before anyone else. Costs just 99 cents a month. It goes a massive way towards helping the channel, and yeah, in exchange for that, you get the best member content out there available. If not though, huge thank you for sitting through this video. We've got a big breakdown of the Odyssey on screen right now too, so if you've seen that movie, you're excited to talk about it, you're excited to hear someone talk about it in a British accent, then head over there right after this. If not though, huge thank you for sitting through this video. I've been your host Paul, you've been the best, and I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.